and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today in the show, we have Caitlin Bass. She is a hospice and palliative medicine fellow, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, "You Deserve a Doctor Who's a Good Fit for You." Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and journey to where you are today?
Sure. I am, as you said, a hospice and palliative care fellow. I just finished up my internal medicine residency right around the time when COVID was hitting and had this whole glorious plan to do palliative care. And then I think, we're all kind of in it right now. The world caught on fire, basically. And everybody's plans went up in smoke.
So I understand you practice in Florida, and we're speaking towards the end of August, and certainly there's a surge of COVID cases that's going on. So tell me some of the challenges and some of the cases and patients that you're seeing from the palliative care standpoint.
We are inundated right now. I think all of Florida, and not even just Florida, but South and Southeast is pretty much in a giant surge. We are seeing younger patients, we are seeing mostly unvaccinated patients, and we're having a hard time because we have shut down our hospital to visitors again, just because we don't want to expose them or them to expose us. And it is really a huge struggle to be able to explain to families why they can't be with their loved ones. And most of them get it and are grateful to just hear from us and hear kind of that we are taking good care of their relatives, but it just adds such a layer of complexity and honestly horror to what's happening.
Now, over the last 18 months of the pandemic, from your view as a palliative care fellow, what would you say are some of the biggest things that you've learned over the last 18 months of the pandemic?
Being a palliative care provider really inspires you and teaches you and gets you in this really deep level of bluntness. We are the team who is going to tell you the truth no matter what, no matter how bad it is. And I think we've all seen this as clinicians in the past 18 months of the truth is something that is so precious and so twisted. And as things change and as the rules change and as the guidelines change, everybody is so stinking confused. And it's so hard and so important for us as clinicians, not just palliative care, but for everybody to, I know you said it 16 times today, I know you'll have to say it 16 times tomorrow, but we just keep explaining and keep telling the truth.
All right, let's transition now into the Kevin MD article that you wrote. It's titled, "You Deserve a Doctor Who's a Good Fit for You." Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read that article, can you just walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
Absolutely. A dear friend of mine whose mother was recently diagnosed with breast cancer had surgery, had done everything that she needed to do. She had followed her surgeon's plan. It was great. And then she saw the oncologist and left that meeting unclear as to whether or not she actually had cancer still. She didn't know. She couldn't figure it out. And she's an intelligent person. She's a reasonable patient. She had tried to do everything that you would do. And I said to her, maybe you need a second opinion. Maybe you need to talk to someone else. It's okay. Like, if you didn't understand what your oncologist said to the point that we don't know whether or not you still have cancer, you need a new guy. And that was so hard for her to accept that it was okay to ask for a second opinion, or that you could ask even the oncologist that you had spoken to recommend someone else, or that we as clinicians aren't going to be offended when you ask for a second opinion. And then once this kind of story came to light, it was so many stories of people that I know who, oh, well, I told my doctor that, but I don't know that they heard me, or I don't really understand what they said. And I think that kind of also ties back into the COVID thing of nobody understands what the truth is anymore. And we have to keep spreading the truth as much as we possibly can. And to do that, we need our patients to trust us. And if they don't, it's okay if they find a new doctor.
Now, for that patient in your story, you said it was very difficult for her to perhaps move on or get a second opinion from that oncologist. Why do you think it was so difficult for that patient?
I think it was this big, scary, when patients hear that cancer word, right? They kind of shut down. And I think she shut down. And again, because of COVID, she wasn't allowed to have anyone in the room with her. So she didn't have any backup to say, hey, what happened? Hey, whatever. Hey, no one understood what you just said. So she refused to get a second opinion, but she did allow her daughter to be on speakerphone with her going forward. So they did have some sort of medical translation, and a level of trust was built up amongst them. But my thing is, you wouldn't just buy the first car that you test drove, right? You would look at cars, you would look at different cars, you would see what you needed. And I don't like to throw around the word research lightly, because we know all of our patients do their research, and we've been to at probably minimum 12 years of school to get to where we are, and that hurts a little bit. But really, you should research your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
See what their accreditation is. Make sure that they are affiliated with people that you trust and institutions, and that they follow guidelines.
What kind of advice do you have for patients who may be in their best interest to seek another opinion? Because I always say, especially in primary care, which I practice in, is that every patient-physician partnership isn't necessarily going to work out, right? It's almost like a marriage, right? So I think that sometimes, no matter how well-intentioned both sides are, it's just not going to work out for whatever reason. Now, for patients where that fit isn't necessarily right, what kind of advice do you have for them?
I think it's, as you said, I think the marriage analogy there is really great, because I need my patients to be incredibly honest with me, and I'm going to talk about things that maybe no one has ever talked about with them. And if they don't feel comfortable saying those things to me, I'm happy to help even facilitate, hey, let's find you a second opinion, or maybe you need to see someone of a different gender, or maybe you need to see someone who speaks your language natively. And if I can help figure that out, I will. And that I would tell the patients that if you genuinely feel so like you're not getting through, or you don't understand what your doctor said, find a new one. There are lots of us. It's okay. We won't be offended.
Sometimes, though, there isn't a lot of us, right? I think a lot of patients who practice in rural areas, for instance, or patients who live in rural areas, there may be a shortage of clinicians, or clinicians may have long waiting lists. And I think that is one of the reasons why patients stick to physicians that may not be good matches. Like, I guess, what kind of recourse do you have for patients where there is, in fact, a primary care shortage, or if they move on from that clinician, they may have to wait months to see another one?
So I would say that your health it's priceless to you. So if we're not talking a time issue, if you got to drive, you got to drive. But also bring it up to your clinician in some way of, hey, I don't know that you are understanding what I'm saying, or I don't feel like you heard me when I said this, and this is really bothering me, knowing that hopefully those things will be well received.
We're talking to Caitlin Bass. She is a palliative care and hospice fellow, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, "You Deserve a Doctor Who's a Good Fit for You." So, Caitlin, speaking from the physician standpoint, what kind of signs can physicians pick up on to make them realize that, hey, this partnership may not work out? And how much do you try to salvage that partnership before saying to that patient, hey, maybe you need to see someone else?
I've actually said, hey, maybe I'm not the best fit for you. And I have those patients, and they will keep coming back to see you in clinic, and you're like, I don't understand why you don't do anything that I say. And then it'll come down to, well, everyone else was mean to me, or everyone else was dismissive. So I absolutely recommend that they see someone else when they, if we're on the second or even third visit where I've tried to suggest something, what I or you would consider super basic, of take your blood pressure medicine, take your thyroid medicine, take something that is just the answer, that is black and white, right? You have high blood pressure, you take an antihypertensive. And I will tell them, hey, if it doesn't make sense, if we can try different things, but I just keep seeing them, I think you have to be appropriate and honest of, this is a bad plan, you're following a bad plan, I do not support your bad plan, and this is
Mhm.
why.
Switching back to the topic of palliative care and hospice, what kind of messages do you have to your primary care colleagues who may be listening to this show?
That we genuinely and truly we don't get a commission from hospice. We're not trying to send all your patients to hospice. That is not what we do. I tell all my patients there, and often sometimes their providers as well, I have no skin in this game. I just want what your patient wants. I am their medical translator. I am their voice in a system that is easy to get lost in. We are all on the same side, I promise. Sometimes your patients are just tired and they love you as much as you love them, and they don't want to tell you that.
And my final question, what's your take-home message that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
That even if it feels awkward and weird, if you don't like your doctor and you find yourself not telling them all the truth, even if you are, as a fellow clinician, sometimes I've had to do that, find a new one. Even if it's hard, find a new one.
Caitlin, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.